Hello, everyone. To those just tuning in, welcome. To those who've been checking out sessions throughout the day, welcome back. We hope you're enjoying the content and looking forward to more awesome presentations coming up. A big thank you to our partners and speakers for helping us deliver a fantastic program. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Happy viewing.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Evelyn, for the intro. So, as she said, I'm Axel. I work as a growth product manager at Shopify. And what I wanted to share with you today, I named my presentation Tactics for Growth Product Management, for lack of a better name. But I do realize now it might set the wrong expectations regarding like what's a tactic. So I think like what I want to share today is more on the like process on how to run your team side of things, rather than actually like sharing growth hacks and things that you can implement for your product. As said before, I think that in the first talk, these kind of growth hacks really depend much more on like what's your product, who are your users, and understanding them. So what I wanted to share is kind of a compilation of things and tools that I've used in my role to make my team work more efficiently and grow as a growth product manager. So let's get started. Okay, so first off, maybe I can get a show of hands of who is a product manager in the room. Yeah, so that's like the majority. It's great. I wanted to touch first on like the difference between traditional product management and growth product management. Not sure if that's like clear to everyone. It's definitely not clear for me. So you're gonna see that in a second. And then from this difference, I think I want to highlight that in some aspects, it's more difficult for a growth product manager to do their job. It's more difficult than a traditional product manager. I'm going to show why. And the following things that I think are made more difficult for the growth product manager are unlocking resources, defining output and timelines, finding opportunities, launching and measuring. And I wanted to share like some of the things I found useful in my work to execute on those things. So let's start with the difference between traditional and growth product manager. And I found this definition on a few articles. I'm not sure where it comes from. I'm not sure like who has the paternity of this, but for sure I've seen that in a few different places, and I think it's interesting, and it's also limited in a way to see it like this. But basically, it says that traditional product management is creating or improving value provided to users. And growth product management is connecting more people to the existing value of the product. Why I think it's interesting is that from this definition, you kind of understand what a growth product management team is going to work on. It's not going to work on building the core product, but it's rather going to work on optimizing the core product and creating new distribution channels for the core product. So that I think is interesting. It's useful because you can actually like understand what's your scope, what you have to work on as a growth product manager. But I think it's limited because basically it's like very binary. And if you take an example, let's say as a early stage startup, you're building your product, you need to build your core product, but you also need at the same time to connect users to your product to create growth. So you kind of need a mix of both. And I wanted to see another way to look at this difference is to have, to kind of like plot with two dimensions: the projects or the things that you might have in your company, the projects that that product is working on, and plot them on two axes. On one side, you can have growth and what is more related to like bringing in more users to using your product. And might be a bit like more short-term approach, like very fast-paced, where you need to be experimenting, you need to be reacting to trends and market very fast. And on the other axis, you put the things that are more infrastructure/maintenance side of things, and that are typically more long-term, where you want to build for the long term and so on. And then you plot a few projects that you have, so you find on the extreme side of growth with no maintenance infrastructure, you have top of the funnel expansion, typically what marketing does, and or conversion optimization. And on the other extreme side of like high infrastructure maintenance and not really related to growth, you have things like production engineering or working on bugs or even like redesigns. And so then you kind of draw a scope of like what product management is doing in your company, or what, if you have like a large company, what is the scope of like one team. And for most teams, it's actually like somewhere in the middle. So then it's like, it makes you realize that basically every product team has to work on growth, or not every, but like most of them have to work on growth. And therefore, like in theory, there's not much difference between growth product management versus traditional. It's just a matter of using using tactics when it's relevant, on which projects is going to be relevant. So, but I think like despite this, what I found is that it's usually more, it's usually easier for traditional product managers to define the work, to build a team, get resources, and to define output and timelines, because very often when a company creates a product team or hires a product manager, they either have a feature that needs to be taken care of. So that's like even what is very often called like feature teams. So you have a scope that is defined, you're gonna take care of this feature. Or there is a new project. So there's a new strategic project to build a new feature or a new set of features. And therefore this creates the team. So the company, the leadership puts together a team, assembles a team, and is giving this mission to build this vision, this set of features or this feature, and therefore the output and the timelines are easier to define. Okay, in 6 months we need to be there, and that is pretty much the feature you're gonna have to build. And so for growth, it's much more blurry, like what is growth, what features you very often don't have a scope of features. You're even going on the scope of other teams to implement some things. So it makes it very difficult to do two things, I found, is unlocking resources, so growing your team, scaling your team, and defining the output. So what should your team be doing and when? This is like a framework or a formula that I found. Maybe you're using something similar, or you've seen this around. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's like something that I found useful for me, is like how to get resources. Well, you know that if you want to get more resources, you have to show impact, and you have to show to your leadership that if they give you more resources, you can bring more impact. But the impact is very difficult to define. It's like very vague. What is impact? What is? It's not really actionable. When you say I want to bring impact, you don't really know what to do. So the objective of this formula is to kind of split it into different components, and some components are going to be more actionable for you. So it reads impact equals taxes, but it has nothing to do with taxes. Maybe it's just a way to memorize it. I mean, at least for me, like when your financial impact personally go up, your taxes also go up, especially in my home country in France. But that was just for the joke. So what does taxes mean, or TAXS? It means team, average impact, experiment cadence, and success rate. And basically, the goal of this formula is to split into different components that are going to be more actionable. So first of all, you're gonna have the team, which is your team size. And this is something where you want to go to your leadership and say, look, if you give me more resources, if you add people to the team, this is what's gonna happen. And this is the effect on the bottom line impact. The other two things where you actually, as a team, have a very strong effect on are the experiment cadence and the success rate. The experiment cadence is basically the number of experiments you're going to be able to run and the pace at which you're going to be able to do that. And this you can directly go to your team and say, look, if we want to have this impact this quarter, we need to roll out 3 experiments, or we need to do 1 experiment per week. So this sets like a productive environment where your team knows that every 2 weeks you want to ship something, and it's motivating. The other component on which you have leverage is the success rate. The success rate is basically how well are you crafting your hypothesis, how much evidence are you putting into that, how much good ideas, how well are you crafting your experiments are going to make them more successful. So you as a product manager, your designer, your data scientist, your engineers, you have direct impact on that as well. Great. So once you have more resources, you're starting, you manage to convince people with this framework that you can have more impact, or your team is motivated to roll out a certain number of experiments. You need to find those opportunities, and that is also a bit more difficult for growth product managers in general, I find, because the scope is so large, and because the nature of growth is also to be able to seize some opportunities and some low-hanging fruit that might not be taken into account by the overall strategy of the company. And so what I found useful to find those opportunities is to start really from the kind of first principles to draw your product and the growth levers to your product. What are the things that are the basic things or levers that are, if they grow, your product's gonna grow. So this is the example of a product marketplace. If you add more supply, more products to sell, your marketplace is bigger. If you bring more traffic, the marketplace gets bigger. If you increase the conversion, the marketplace grows, and so on. But once you have this list, you go to each of those levers and ask yourself, what can I do to grow the supply? What can I do to grow the traffic, and so on? And this is pretty much a collaborative process. So you want to involve your stakeholders and your team in coming up with the ideas in this framework. So for example, if you take traffic, you go then from to more and more granular, and list down the channels and the product groups, or in that case it's traffic, so it's more like the marketing channels that you want to list that you currently have. You identify gaps or some things that may not exist at this point on your in your marketing mix, and list all that, and then go to more and more granular, and list the marketing campaigns or activities that you're doing. And then this is going to give you ideas of experiments to run. So this is, again, pretty much a collaborative process. You want to involve everyone that has creative input in your company, your stakeholders, your team as well. And you end up with a large map like this of opportunities with a lot of experiments that you can run. I know you can't read anything, it was on purpose. But basically, you can use this map again to communicate with your leadership and say, now here is what we can do. Here's the different areas and the different experiments that we can do. What do you want us to focus on? And from here, the goal is to, with each of those opportunities, to go and gather evidence, gather data around them, and understand like what's the best opportunity to tackle. But this is great because you can keep this for a long time. Even if in one quarter you're going to work on acquisition, you can keep it for later when you might have to work on activation or retention and so on. Great. So you have a backlog of ideas. It's great. You have your team. They're motivated to launch experiments. Now you want to build and actually build your experiments. And I found a couple of challenges as well. And here is what you generally want to do when you launch things, especially small features, experiments. You want to understand very, very quickly if you want to go and iterate on that experiment or if you want to stop it. And for that, you want to do two things. You want to optimize two things to be as fast as possible. Is launching as fast as possible and measuring things as fast as possible. And this is challenging. Launching, why? Because you might be on the scope of some other teams. You have to negotiate things. You have to explain why you want to run this experiment. And very often it's you're going to face some objections, some hurdles on the way. And I find a few things that help me to make that launch as fast as possible, like solve as many questions as fast as possible and go live quickly, is to make sure that with the hypothesis you have, with the experiment you have, you define your target audience and you can actually target this audience very precisely. So you want to make sure that when you launch experiments, you're not just blasting to everyone, but you're targeting exactly the audience that you want to be targeting. If you do so, then there'll be less questions around saying like, why are we going to show this to this audience or that? If this is clearly defined and clearly targeted, that helps you to launch faster. If you can't target your audience, you may as well not run the experiment because also the results are going to be polluted. And then once you've targeted your audience, you want to make sure you get the maximum exposure within that audience. So you want to make sure your feature is visible, your experiment is visible, because you can't afford to doubt whether the problem is that the users didn't like the feature or they didn't want to use it, or it's because they didn't see it. You want to remove that doubt. You want to make sure everyone has seen it, and if you get bad, shitty results, it's because the feature is not good. And then silent launch and sunset is possible. That means you want to make sure before you launch that removing the feature is going to be possible, easy. It's not going to hurt the overall user experience. And you want to also make sure that you're not promoting your feature in a way that is basically not going to help you understand what's the true impact of your feature. So the silent launch is a way to say, we're only going to, again, target this specific audience. We're not going to blast around and try to promote to people that is not relevant to. But yeah, as soon as you've, I think like defined those things, it's like for me, I find very much easier to actually roll out the experiment faster. And then in terms of measuring things, like that's also a challenge, because if you run experiments, a lot of people will tell you like you can't look at the results if it's an A/B test, for example, before 2 weeks, or if you're doing something on retention, like you need to wait that your cohorts are retained, so like you need to wait weeks, and you just can't wait weeks. Like you, I mean, you want to understand like after 1 day, is this working or not? Can I be excited? And you just can't look at the A/B test dashboard or whatever dashboard you have prepared, because it's just telling you wrong things. It's not statistically relevant and so on. It's probably showing you the totally incorrect results. So what I found useful is tracking very early indicators that are kind of rules of thumb that I found. Like again, this works for me. Maybe in a year time, I'll have like this will not work anymore for me, and I'll have other ones. But this I find useful. For example, if you do session recordings and you figure out 3 or more users out of 5 are actually succeeding on the task that you define, that's a good sign. On the contrary, if less than 10% of the target audience actually using your feature, like you should probably kill it straight away, because there's chances it's just like polluting the UI. It's adding also complexity to the code where you just don't need that. So you might as well stop and test something new. And if you have something that is very visible, very exposed, like a pop-up or a banner or something like this, I usually go for like a rule of thumb of 50% click-through rate. So if you're like blocking the UI for showing something, and if you have less than 50% click-through rate, like this is not good. You're probably doing something wrong. If you have more, like it's a positive sign. Like you can at least continue and let the experiment run, and then see your results on the dashboard. Okay, so that. Those were my tactics. I hope it's useful for you. Also, I realized like these are like completely opinionated, like kind of things that have worked for me, and maybe you guys have some some discussion points, some you want to challenge some of these things, and actually I'm looking for that. So if you want to discuss things afterwards, really happy to do that. And thank you. Okay, so we have 2 questions here. Just gonna drink some water. How do you work with growth marketing on experiments, and how do you prioritize? So growth marketing, so this would be probably like maybe traditional marketing or performance marketing or something. Maybe how do you prioritize? So I think like if you look back at the canvas that I used, or the framework with the growth levers, and then from there how you find the opportunities, like this is like eventually growth marketing or marketing is a stakeholder of yours, and you include them in the process. So you make sure that you gather their ideas as well. So you put them on the map, and then how do you prioritize? So I think this depends on like I think the traditional like product management way of prioritizing is like effort versus impact, and that's what I use usually. So I kind of score things based on impact and effort, and whatever has the highest impact goes first, and the lowest effort goes first. Like whatever has the highest score goes first. But then it also depends what you negotiate with your leadership. What do they want you to focus on specific areas. Okay, we have how do you iterate on growth experiments for features that are strategic bets but don't have immediate positive user metrics or signals. That's a good question. Actually, I think like those are two very different things. Like big strategic bets is something that is necessary in some companies at some stages. It's I think like wherever I worked, it's something that is necessary. You cannot just run your company with growth teams. That wouldn't work. You need to also make big strategic bets where you build things for the long term, and some things take 6 months to be shipped or a year or more. And before that, you have no way to get actual insights. You have ways, but it's going to be more around qualitative research and so on. So I think those are like two ways of working. I think like you can only do growth when you actually have a product, so you can optimize on it, or you can build distribution channels for it. But if you don't have anything that is live, like it's difficult. You don't really do growth experiments at that point. What does tofu expansion mean? Yeah, that's like it means top of the funnel expansion. So top of the funnel is basically growing your top of the funnel, meaning like you want to grow the number of impressions and clicks that you get from the top of the funnel channels. So that would be your marketing channels, video, or SEO, blog, and so on. So I realized like this is relevant more for B2C companies, consumer products, and so on. Like may not be very relevant for like a sales-driven B2B SaaS or something. How do you maintain speed, high velocity when you are going through each of these processes in a lot of granularity before building any experiments? Well, I have to read that again. I'm not sure I understand this. I think, yeah, maybe I understand this in a way that if you spend your time doing all these, filling out all these frameworks and going through generating ideas and so on, maybe you don't have the time to actually execute and like be with your team on managing the projects and like making sure things are moving forward. So I think you have to do both. Like I think good product managers are able to do both. So they're able to keep a bird's eye view on the strategy and generating new ideas and finding the low-hanging fruits. But at the same time, like go into like hardcore execution and every day following up on things. And making sure things are moving forward. So you just maintain it by working a lot, I guess. I have no tricks for that. Do you work with maybe just one last, or yeah? Do you work with data scientists to understand growth opportunities and measure the success? How does that work at Shopify? So Shopify is an awesome company. There is like a lot of data science resources. There are people that are very, very skilled in data science, and they are actually embedded in the product team. So you always work with data scientists, and they own things like implementing tracking or this, like creating tracking concepts for your new features and new product launches. And they also work on identifying market opportunities, product gaps, creating dashboards, generating insights. So that's really awesome. In the past, in the companies I worked before, I was more in the startup world. Like you have to do that yourself, and you go ahead and create yourself the insights. You go ahead and design yourself the tracking concept for your feature. So you all do that yourself as a PM. But when you're in a larger company like Shopify, like you have more resources and you kind of have to delegate this, and you gladly delegate it to people that are much more skilled and experienced than you. That's it, I guess. One more, great. Where does growth PMing stop and PMMing start? So I have to be honest with you, I don't really know what PMM is. It's a little bit, I think I may have to chat with Evelyn much more.
It's my job title.
Exactly. And
Product marketing.
I think I have to speak with these people to understand what the role is. To me, it sounds like it's, again, one of the responsibilities of the PM that is kind of starting to be unbundled. When your company gets bigger, you create those positions, which make a lot of sense because it would be too much for just a product manager to do that. So the launch strategies and so on. So I think, well, while I don't know, I know if I work with I actually don't work with a product marketing manager very closely, but if I do work with one, I mean, like, people that are great at what they do, they are able to show you what's the value of like what they are gonna do. And if they come to my team and say, I'm gonna do PMM on your team, nothing is going to be given to them. Like, there's not going to be a task list or a scope of things that they have to work on, but they'll have to find and they have to show, like, this is what I can bring to the table. Like, this is how we should do things. And gradually you build your kind of trust battery and you take on like more scope and so on. But again, yeah, I think I have to maybe spend the afternoon in the other room and definitely chat with Evelyn much more. Cool. Thanks a lot.
I'll take that. Thank you, Axel. Okay, well, with that, we are actually at time for a coffee break. Before